2 months ago, I was bleeding out in an ambulance after a car accident. My 3-year-old twins were home with a sitter who was about to leave. So I called my parents, the same parents I'd been secretly paying $3,200 a month for the past 8 years. Their mortgage, their insurance, their emergencies, all me. And you know what I got back? A family group chat message that said, "You've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets tonight. Figure it out yourself." Then my sister sent a laughing emoji while I was dying. So from that hospital bed, I did something that would shatter my entire family. And when my grandfather found out what I'd done, he called a meeting that ended with my parents losing everything. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. Growing up, I thought every family had a ranking system. I just didn't realize I was at the bottom of mine. My sister Vanessa was 3 years older, effortlessly beautiful, magnetic in a way that made our parents' faces light up like Christmas morning every single time she entered a room. Me, I was practical. That's the word my father used when I told him I wanted to become a doctor. Not proud, not excited, practical. Vanessa announced she wanted to pursue fashion design, and my mother cried happy tears. Called her their little visionary, threw her a celebration dinner, posted about it on Facebook 17 times. I got into one of the top medical schools in the country and got a nod. A nod. Like I just told them I was picking up groceries. But here's what I told myself back then. It didn't matter. I buried myself in textbooks, aced every exam, clawed my way through 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 3 brutal years of residency specializing in cardiology. I was building something they'd have to respect eventually, right? Wrong. The day I graduated from medical school should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. My parents showed up 2 hours late. 2 hours. I stood there in my cap and gown, watching other families take photos, crying, celebrating, while I checked my phone every 3 minutes, wondering if they'd even come. When they finally arrived, my mother didn't even meet my eyes. She just said, "Sorry, sweetheart." Vanessa had an emergency meeting with a potential investor. We had to drop her off first. No flowers, no celebration dinner, just a quick photo in the parking lot. Literally in the parking lot between 2 cars, before they rushed off because Vanessa needed emotional support after her meeting apparently didn't go well. You want to know what they did for Vanessa's first fashion show 3 years earlier? The entire family flew to New York. 5-star hotel, front row seats. My father posted 17 photos on Facebook with captions like "So proud of our talented girl" and "Our star is rising." I got a parking lot photo and a text that said, "Congrats, honey," with a period, not even an exclamation point. And I made excuses for them. I actually made excuses. I told myself fashion is competitive. Vanessa needs more support. Medicine is stable. I can handle things on my own. I was so good at convincing myself that their neglect was somehow logical, somehow fair. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that their favoritism wasn't just emotional. It was financial, and I was the one paying for it. It started 8 years ago, right after I finished medical school and started my residency. I was exhausted working 16-hour shifts, learning to save lives while barely keeping my own together. My father called me one evening, and I remember his voice sounded different. Tight, embarrassed. He said, "Myra, we're in a bit of a bind. The mortgage payment is due, and things are tight this month. Could you help us out? Just this once." Just this once. Those 3 words. I transferred $2,400 that night without hesitation. They were my parents. Of course I would help. Of course I would. But just this once became every single month. The mortgage. Then their health insurance premiums. $800 monthly when Dad's company dropped their coverage. Then the emergencies. The car repairs. The roof leak. The new furnace. The endless needs. And I never said no. Not once. Because saying no felt like admitting I didn't love them enough. Like proving I was the cold, practical daughter they'd always treated me as. Then I got pregnant with the twins, and their father, the man who'd promised me forever, walked out during my 5th month. Just left. Said he wasn't ready for the responsibility, and disappeared like our relationship had been a trial period he decided not to renew. I was terrified, alone, working brutal shifts while my body changed and my future became exponentially more complicated. I had a bleeding episode at 6 months. Scary enough that the nurses told me to call someone, to not be alone. So I called my parents from the hospital, my hands shaking, my voice breaking, desperate for them to just show up for once. My mother's response? "Oh, honey, we wish we could come. But Vanessa is so stressed after her show in Milan. She really needs us right now." They didn't come. Not for the bleeding scare. Not for the birth. I labored for 14 hours with only a nurse holding my hand. Not for the first month when I was nursing 2 newborns while studying for my board exams, sleeping 90 minutes at a time, crying in the shower because I didn't know how I was going to survive. But you know what kept going out like clockwork? The automatic transfers. $2,400 on the 1st of every month. $800 on the 15th. Whatever emergency amount they texted me about in between. I kept a spreadsheet. I don't even know why I started it. Maybe some part of me needed to see it in black and white, needed proof that I wasn't imagining the imbalance. The numbers were staggering. 8 years. $320,000. Give or take. More than most people make in 7 years of full-time work. And I did it while completing one of the most demanding medical residencies in the country and raising infant twins alone. I never asked for gratitude. I never expected a parade or a medal or even a thank you, though I can count on one hand how many times I got one. But I also never expected to be called a burden. I never expected that the people I'd been carrying for almost a decade would abandon me when I needed them most. That reckoning came on a Tuesday evening. I was driving home after a 16-hour shift. My eyes were heavy, but I was alert enough. I'd done this drive 1,000 times. The light turned green. I pulled into the intersection, and I never saw the truck. It ran the red light, doing 50 miles an hour. The impact hit my driver's side door. Glass exploded everywhere. Metal screamed. The world spun and then went black, and for a moment I thought, this is it, this is how it ends. I woke up in an ambulance. There was pain, searing pain radiating through my abdomen like something inside me had torn open. And there was a face hovering above me, familiar, concerned. "Myra, Myra, can you hear me?" Dr. Marcus Smith, emergency physician at my hospital. We'd worked together for 2 years, shared coffee in the break room, complained about hospital politics. Good guy. Calm, under pressure. "Marcus," my voice came out wrong, weak, not like mine. "What's happening?" "You were in an accident. We're taking you in now. Possible internal bleeding. You're going to need surgery." Surgery. The word hit me like a second collision. My kids. I grabbed his arm, my fingers slippery with something I realized was my own blood. Lily and Lucas. There with the babysitter. She leaves at 8. Marcus checked his watch. It's 7:15. 45 minutes. I had 45 minutes to find someone to watch my children, while doctors cut me open to stop me from bleeding to death. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, smearing blood across the screen as I pulled up my parents' number. It rang 4 times. Each ring felt like an eternity. "Myra." My father's voice was impatient, distracted. I could hear background noise, music, voices. "We're about to leave. What is it?" "Dad, I need help." The words tumbled out between gasps of pain. "I was in an accident. I'm being taken to the hospital. Surgery. Please, I need you and Mom to watch the twins. Just for a few hours. Please." Silence on the line. Then, "Hold on." I heard muffled voices. My mother's tone, sharp and annoyed. Vanessa's laugh in the background, high and carefree. The line went quiet. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. Family group chat. I looked down at the screen, and the message was from my mother. Myra, you've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Vanessa tonight. We've been planning this for months. Figure it out yourself. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. They didn't soften. They didn't turn into some kind of misunderstanding. A second message appeared, this one from my father. You're a doctor. You're used to hospitals. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. Then Vanessa. Not words. Just a laughing emoji. That's what I was worth to them. A laughing emoji while I lay bleeding in an ambulance, potentially dying, begging for help with my children. Marcus was watching me. I didn't realize he could see my screen until he spoke, his voice careful, controlled, the way doctors sound when they're trying not to show how angry they are. Myra, what did they say? I couldn't answer. Something inside me had cracked open, and it wasn't just the internal bleeding. It was something deeper, something that had been holding together for 34 years. I need a phone, I whispered. A phone with internet. Mine's dying. He handed me his without question, without hesitation. I Googled emergency nanny services, found one with 24-hour availability, called them, and explained the situation in clipped professional sentences. Yes, I would pay triple the rate. Yes, I would provide the babysitter's contact information for handoff instructions. Yes, I authorized payment immediately. The whole thing took 4 minutes. Marcus was still watching me when I handed back his phone. He didn't say anything. What was there to say? Can you screenshot those messages? I asked. From my phone before it dies. He nodded slowly, understanding something I hadn't said out loud. Yeah, I can do that. I closed my eyes as the ambulance pulled into the hospital bay. The pain was overwhelming now, radiating through every nerve, but it wasn't coming from my abdomen anymore. It was coming from somewhere much deeper, somewhere I'd been protecting my whole life. And from that hospital bed, with an 4 in my arm and fear in my heart, and the knowledge that I'd just paid strangers to do what my parents wouldn't, I made the easiest decision of my life. Now, before I tell you what happened in that operating room and what I did next, I need you to understand something. There's a difference between being strong and being used. For 8 years, I thought I was the strong one, the reliable one, the daughter who didn't need anything. But strength isn't carrying people who refuse to walk, and reliability isn't the same as being exploited. If you've ever been the person everyone leans on but nobody shows up for, type, I felt this in the comments. Because what I'm about to tell you next, the decision I made from that hospital bed, it didn't just change my life. It detonated my entire family. And honestly, I'd do it again. The surgery took 4 hours. For hours of doctors repairing a ruptured spleen and stopping internal bleeding that, according to Marcus, would have killed me within another 20 minutes if I hadn't gotten to the hospital when I did. 20 minutes. That's how close I came. And my parents were at a Taylor Swift concert, singing along to Shake It Off, while I was on an operating table fighting for my life. I spent 5 days in the hospital. 5 days of 4 drips and morphine haze and nurses checking my vitals every few hours. 5 days of staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them, recounting them, trying to process what had happened. And in those 5 days, not one call from my parents. Not one text. Not one visit. Complete silence. The emergency nanny service I'd hired turned out to be worth every penny. They coordinated with my regular sitter, kept Lily and Lucas safe and fed and on their routine, sent me photo updates 3 times a day. Strangers took better care of my situation than my own blood. Let that sink in. On day 3, I asked the nurse for my laptop. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Are you sure you're up for it? You should be resting. I need to take care of something. My hands were steady as I logged into my banking app. Steadier than they'd been in years, actually. 8 years of automatic transfers stared back at me. Regular as clockwork. Reliable as sunrise. $2,400 on the 1st of every month. $800 on the 15th. Emergency transfers scattered throughout, each one tagged with a reason. Roof repair, car transmission, medical bills, Vanessa's studio deposit. I sat there in that hospital bed, stitches in my abdomen, pain medication flowing through my veins, and I canceled every single one. Every single one. Then I opened my phone settings and blocked 3 numbers. Dad, Mom, Vanessa. There was no dramatic moment, no tears, no second-guessing or hand-wringing or wondering if I was doing the right thing. It felt like setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there, like finally being able to stand up straight. Marcus stopped by later that afternoon. He'd been checking on me every day, bringing coffee he knew I couldn't drink yet, and keeping me company in those weird, quiet hours when hospitals feel most lonely. "How are you feeling?" he asked, settling into the chair beside my bed. I looked up at him, and for the first time in 8 years I told the truth. Better. For the first time in 8 years, I actually feel better. He didn't push for details. He just nodded like he understood, like he'd seen the text messages and screenshots and put together what I'd done. And maybe he had. Maybe it was obvious to everyone except me. I knew the fallout was coming. I knew my parents would notice the missing money eventually. They'd rage and cry and demand explanations. They'd play the victim, spin the narrative, make me out to be the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family. But I didn't expect what came next. I didn't expect him. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was finally home, moving slowly, still sore, but alive and healing. It was a Saturday morning, and I was making pancakes for Lily and Lucas, their favorite weekend treat. The kitchen smelled like butter and maple syrup. Lucas was building a tower with his blocks, while Lily helped by knocking it down, and for a moment everything felt almost normal. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on my front door. Authoritative, deliberate. My heart rate spiked immediately. I wasn't ready for confrontation. Wasn't ready to face my parents' anger or Vanessa's manipulation or whatever guilt trip they'd prepared. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and looked through the peephole, and my breath caught. Standing on my doorstep was a tall man in his 70s, silver hair neatly combed, sharp blue eyes that I remembered from childhood, a posture that still carried the authority of 40 years on the federal bench. Grandpa Thomas. I hadn't seen him in almost 3 years. My parents always had excuses for why we couldn't visit. Too busy, too far, too inconvenient. Now I understood why. I opened the door, and he pulled me into a hug so tight it made my surgical incision ache, but I didn't care. I held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had been spinning out of control. "Myra." His voice was rough with emotion. "Let me look at you." He pulled back, his eyes scanning my face and then dropping to where my hand rested protectively over my abdomen. "I know everything," he said quietly. "Eleanor told me." Aunt Eleanor, my mother's younger sister, the only person in the family who'd ever openly questioned how my parents treated me, who'd always slipped me $20 at holidays with a wink and a "buy yourself something nice." She'd heard about the accident through a cousin, and she'd called Grandpa Thomas. "Grandpa, I don't," he held up a hand. "You don't need to explain anything, but I do need you to come somewhere with me." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, elegant, formal, an invitation. "My 70th birthday party. Next Saturday. The whole family will be there." His eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made my pulse quicken. And I have some things that need to be said. I understood what he was offering. A reckoning. A stage. An audience. "Grandpa, I didn't do this for revenge. I just needed to stop." "I know," he interrupted gently, "but sometimes the truth needs witnesses. And this family has been living in a lie for far too long." He stayed for coffee, sat at my kitchen table watching Lily and Lucas with a soft smile, letting them show off their toys and demand his attention. He gave it freely, completely, in a way my parents never had. "They look just like you did at that age," he said. "Same stubborn chin." After he left, I stood in my kitchen, holding that invitation, my hands trembling. I'd wanted to handle this quietly, wanted to just disappear from my parents' lives and let them figure out their own problems. But Grandpa Thomas was right about one thing. This family had been living in a lie, and maybe it was time for the truth to come out. Over the next week, I prepared. Grandpa had asked me to compile records, so I printed every bank statement, every transfer confirmation, 8 years of financial history, organized chronologically in a plain manila folder. Looking at it all together, laid out in black and white, was staggering. Month after month, year after year, a river of money flowing in one direction, never acknowledged, never appreciated, never even noticed until it stopped. $364,200. I'd done the exact math. That's what I'd given them. Aunt Eleanor came over 3 days before the party. She flipped through the folder, her expression darkening with each page. When she finished, she set it down and looked at me. "Myra, do you understand what this is?" "I know. This is more than most people make in 7 years of full-time work. And they called you a burden." She said it flatly, like she was reading a criminal charge. I pressed my palms against the kitchen counter, feeling the cool granite under my skin. "I don't want to destroy the family, Aunt Eleanor. I just want them to see, to acknowledge what I've done." "You're not destroying anything," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder. "You're just stopping the lie. They built their comfortable life on your silence. You're not obligated to keep giving them that." I nodded, but my stomach churned with anxiety. What if everyone takes their side? "Some might," she shrugged. "Family is complicated, but your grandfather has a lot of influence. And more importantly, you have the truth. The truth doesn't need defending. It just needs to be said." That evening, I got a text from a cousin I barely spoke to. "Heard you and your parents had a falling out. Vanessa's been telling everyone you've been acting erratic since your accident. Just wanted to give you a heads up." I stared at the message. They were already spinning the narrative, already preparing their defense, painting me as unstable, as the problem, as the one who couldn't be trusted. They were setting up their story before I even arrived. I hadn't wanted a fight, but it seemed they were bringing one anyway. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was making a mistake, wondering if exposing them publicly was cruel, vindictive, exactly what they'd claim I was. But then I remembered that text message. "You've always been a nuisance and a burden." I remembered the laughing emoji. I remembered lying in an ambulance, bleeding, terrified, and being told to figure it out myself. And I remembered 8 years of transfers, 8 years of sacrifice, 8 years of being invisible. No, this wasn't cruel. This was necessary. Marcus called me around 10 p.m. "Hey, just checking in. Big day tomorrow." "I'm nervous," I admitted. "You should be. What you're about to do takes guts." He paused. "But for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Some people need to be held accountable. And your parents, they've been getting away with this for too long. What if it backfires? What if everyone thinks I'm the villain?" "Then they're not paying attention," he said simply. "You have receipts, Myra. Literal receipts. 364,000 reasons why you're not the villain here." I laughed despite myself. "When did you become so wise?" "I'm an ER doctor. I've seen every kind of family dysfunction there is. And trust me, what your parents did to you ranks pretty high on the list." After we hung up, I walked into the twins' room. They were sleeping peacefully, Lily clutching her stuffed rabbit, Lucas sprawled out like he owned the entire bed. I watched them breathe, these tiny humans I'd created, and I thought about what kind of family I wanted them to grow up knowing. Did I want them to learn that family means accepting abuse? That love means silence? That you should sacrifice yourself endlessly for people who'll never appreciate it? Or did I want them to learn that boundaries matter? that self-respect isn't selfish, that you can love people from a distance when closeness becomes toxic. I kissed their foreheads and made my decision. Again, Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, clear, the kind of day that mocks you when your insides are churning with dread. I dressed carefully. Navy dress, simple, professional, understated. I wasn't here to make a scene. I wasn't here for drama. I was here to tell the truth. The folder was in my bag. Lily and Lucas were dressed in their nice outfits, excited about the big party at Great-Grandpa's house. They had no idea what was about to happen. That was probably for the best. As I pulled into Grandpa Thomas's circular driveway, I counted the cars. More than 40. The whole family was here. All the aunts and uncles and cousins and second cousins. Everyone who'd believed my parents' version of events. Everyone who'd watched me be treated like an afterthought and said nothing. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Mama, are you okay?" Lily asked from the back seat. I looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Yeah, baby, Mama's okay." And weirdly I was, because I wasn't going into that house as the invisible daughter anymore. I wasn't going in as the ATM. I wasn't going in as the practical one who didn't need anything. I was going in as someone who'd finally chosen herself. And whatever happened next, at least I'd done that. "All right, I need you to do something for me before we go inside. Take a breath. Because what's about to happen in that house, what my grandfather is about to reveal in front of 40 family members, it's going to change everything. And I want to know, have you ever been in a room where everyone believed a lie about you? Where the narrative was already written and you were cast as the villain? Drop a comment. Tell me about it. Because you're about to watch me blow up that narrative completely. And trust me, the looks on their faces when the truth comes out, absolutely priceless. Inside, the party was already in full swing. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes on silver trays. A string quartet played Mozart in the corner. Crystal and silver glinted under the massive chandelier that had been in Grandpa's family for 3 generations. Everything looked perfect, elegant, civilized. The kind of gathering where ugly truths were supposed to stay buried under polite conversation and fake smiles. I spotted them immediately. My parents stood near the fireplace, positioned like they were holding court. Dad in his best suit, looking distinguished with his salt and pepper hair. Mom in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, laughing at something someone said. They looked good, happy, like people who had everything together, like people who definitely weren't living off their daughter's money while calling her a burden. They saw me at the same moment I saw them. Mom's laugh died mid-sound. Dad's face went rigid, his jaw tightening. For a long moment, none of us moved. It was like one of those old West standoffs, except instead of guns we had years of resentment and a manila folder full of bank statements. Then Vanessa appeared, gliding over in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment. Her smile was perfect practiced. Her eyes were ice. "Oh, Myra." She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume overwhelming. "You made it. We heard about your accident. Nothing too serious, I hope." I met her gaze steadily, refusing to look away first. A ruptured spleen and internal bleeding. I almost died. Her smile flickered for just a second. "Mom said it was just a fender bender." "Mom wasn't there," I said quietly. "None of you were." Vanessa's composure cracked for just a moment before she recovered, patting my arm with false sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Well, you look fine now. That's what matters, right?" She drifted away toward a group of cousins, but I could feel the first rumble of thunder in the distance. This was only the beginning. The attack came 30 minutes into the party. I was getting fruit punch for the twins when I heard Vanessa's voice, deliberately loud, carrying across the room like she wanted to make sure I heard every word. "I'm so worried about Myra, honestly." She was talking to a cluster of aunts and cousins near the dessert table, her voice dripping with concern that would have sounded genuine if you didn't know better. The accident really affected her. She's been saying the strangest things. Cut off all contact with Mom and Dad for no reason. I kept my back turned, pouring juice into small cups with steady hands, but every word landed like a small knife between my ribs. Mom joined in right on cue, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief she'd probably brought specifically for this performance. We've tried everything. Calls, texts, emails. She won't respond to anything. I think she's having some kind of breakdown. Poor thing, someone murmured, and I could hear the sympathy in their voice, the way they were already buying the story. She's always been the sensitive one, Vanessa added, and I almost laughed at that. Sensitive. That's what they called it when you finally stopped letting people use you. Remember how dramatic she was as a teenager? I think the stress of being a single mom has just been too much for her. I felt eyes on me, pitying looks, whispered concerns. The family was watching me now, wondering if I was indeed unstable, if the accident had damaged more than just my spleen. I said nothing, just handed Lucas his juice cup and smoothed Lily's hair, waiting, because I knew what was coming. Aunt Eleanor appeared at my side, her voice low and furious. They've been laying groundwork all week, calling relatives, planting seeds, building their defense. They know something's coming, and are trying to discredit you first. I know, I said calmly. Are you okay? I looked across the room at Grandpa Thomas. He was watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression, a glass of whiskey in his hand. When our eyes met, he gave me the smallest nod. Permission, confirmation, support. I'm fine, I told Eleanor. Let them talk. Because that's the thing about lies. They're loud. They need constant reinforcement, constant repetition, constant performance. But the truth? The truth can wait quietly in a manila folder until it's time. The room quieted suddenly. Someone clinked a glass, the clear ring of crystal cutting through the conversation. Grandpa Thomas rose from his chair, and at 70 years old, he still commanded attention like the federal judge he'd been for 4 decades. Every eye in the room turned to him. Before we continue with the festivities, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the space, I have a few things I'd like to say. The air changed. You could feel it, like the pressure drop before a storm. This was it. But before Grandpa could continue, my father stepped forward, his voice controlled, but with an edge of desperation underneath. Dad, wait. He held up a hand. Before you say anything, there's something the family should know. Grandpa raised an eyebrow, but he didn't speak. He just waited, giving my father enough rope. Dad turned to face the room. Every inch the concerned parent, the worried father dealing with a difficult situation. As many of you may have heard, my daughter Myra has been going through a very difficult time lately. He gestured toward me with what looked like genuine sadness. After her accident, she's been confused, distant. She's cut off contact with her mother and me completely. Won't return our calls, our messages, nothing. Mom stepped up beside him, clutching that handkerchief like a lifeline. We've only ever wanted the best for her, she said, her voice trembling perfectly. But she's been spreading terrible lies about us, saying we abandoned her, that we don't love her, when nothing could be further from the truth. The room was silent. I felt 40 pairs of eyes boring into me, measuring me, judging me, wondering if I was the unstable daughter my parents were describing. We've tried to be patient, Dad continued, his voice cracking just slightly. We understand she's been under stress. Single mother, demanding job, the accident. But it's been heartbreaking to watch her turn against us like this. We gave that girl everything. Everything. She's even been claiming we refused to help her during her accident, Vanessa added from across the room, right on script. Which is absolutely not true. There must be some kind of misunderstanding. Someone near me let out a sympathetic murmur. Those poor things. An aunt I barely knew approached me, touching my arm gently. Honey, is everything okay? Your parents are so worried about you. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. What could I say? How could I defend myself against this performance they'd clearly rehearsed? How could I make anyone believe me when they'd already painted me as unstable? Then Grandpa Thomas's voice cut through the room like a gavel striking wood. "Are you finished, Richard?" The question was quiet, almost mild, but every person in that room heard the steel underneath. Every person understood that something was shifting. Dad's confident expression faltered. "I just thought the family should know. The family should know the truth," Grandpa interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying absolute authority. "And I intend to give it to them." He walked to the center of the room, his gait measured and deliberate, the walk of a man who had presided over hundreds of cases and never once lost control of his courtroom. "I've listened to your concerns, Richard. Helen, Vanessa, you've painted a very clear picture of a troubled young woman who's turned against her loving family for no apparent reason." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Now I'd like to ask some questions." Dad shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Mom. "Dad, I don't think this is the place." "This is exactly the place." Grandpa's voice hardened just slightly. "This is family, and families should know the truth about each other." He turned to face my father directly. "Richard, a simple question. Who has been paying the mortgage on your house for the past 8 years?" The color drained from Dad's face. You could literally watch it happen, like someone had pulled a plug. "What?" "Your mortgage. $2,400 a month for 8 years. Who's been paying it?" "We." Dad's eyes darted to Mom, to Vanessa, looking for help that wasn't coming. "We pay our own mortgage." "Do you?" Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the folder. My folder. Because I have here a complete record of bank transfers from Myra's account to your mortgage company. Every month for 96 consecutive months. A murmur rippled through the room, like wind through leaves. People were starting to understand that something was very wrong with the story they'd been told. That's a misunderstanding," Mom stammered, her handkerchief forgotten. Myra offered. "We never asked her to. I'm not suggesting you held a gun to her head," Grandpa said calmly, opening the folder. "I'm simply establishing facts, and I think the family deserves to hear all the facts before making any judgments." He looked around the room, making eye contact with various family members. "Let me share some numbers with you. I think you'll find them illuminating." Across the room, Vanessa had gone pale. Dad's hands were clenched at his sides. Mom looked like she might actually faint, and I stood there holding my children, my heart pounding like a drum, as the truth finally began to surface after 8 years of being buried. 8 years, Grandpa Thomas read from the folder, his voice clear and measured. "Let's break it down, shall we?" The room was utterly silent now. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, the musicians sensing that something significant was happening. Mortgage payments, $230,400. He looked up. "That's the house Richard and Helen live in. The house they claim they pay for themselves." Someone gasped. I saw an uncle's mouth fall open. "Health insurance premiums, $76,800. When Richard's company dropped their coverage, Myra picked up the bill. "For 8 years. He flipped a page. "Car repairs, home maintenance, emergency expenses, approximately $45,000. Another page. "Cash gifts and financial support for Vanessa's fashion ventures, $12,000. He closed the folder. Total, $364,200. Give or take a few hundred. The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. Aunt Eleanor stepped forward. "For context, everyone, that's more than most people make in 7 years of full-time work." Myra did this while completing one of the most demanding medical residencies in the country and raising infant twins. Alone. She offered. Mom's voice cracked desperate. "We never forced her to." "No one said you forced her," Grandpa replied, his tone still measured, still calm. But I am curious about something. In 8 years of receiving this support, how many times did you say thank you? No answer. Just Mom's ragged breathing and Dad's stone-faced silence. How many times did you visit her in the hospital after her twins were born? Still nothing. How many times did you show up for her? Support her? Treat her with even a fraction of the consideration she showed you? My mother started crying. Not the delicate, sympathetic tears from earlier. Real, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders. We thought she was fine, Dad said, his voice hollow, all the confidence drained out. She never complained. She always managed. She's always been so strong, she managed, Grandpa repeated slowly, because she had to. Because you taught her that her needs didn't matter. That asking for help was weakness. That she existed to serve this family, not to be part of it. An uncle near the back of the room shook his head in disgust. Jesus, Richard. $360,000, and you called her a burden. Dad flinched like he'd been physically struck. But Grandpa wasn't finished. Not even close. There's one more thing the family should hear, Grandpa said, pulling out his phone and adjusting his reading glasses. 2 months ago, Myra was in a serious car accident. She was bleeding internally and being rushed to emergency surgery. Her life was in danger. He paused, and in that pause you could feel everyone in the room leaning forward, holding their breath. From the ambulance, while she was in pain and terrified, she called her parents. Her children were home with a babysitter who was about to leave. She needed someone, anyone, to watch them for a few hours while doctors tried to save her life. My mother's sobs got louder. This is the text message she received in response. From Helen. I'll read it exactly as it was written. He cleared his throat. Myra, you've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Vanessa tonight. Figure it out yourself. The room erupted. Oh my God, someone breathed. That's not. You're taking it out of context, Vanessa said desperately, her polished facade completely shattered. There is no context, Aunt Eleanor snapped. That makes abandoning your daughter during a medical emergency acceptable. We didn't know it was serious, Dad shouted, his composure finally breaking completely. Did you ask? Grandpa's voice cut through the chaos. Did you call her back? Did you go to the hospital afterward? Did you check on her? On your grandchildren? Silence. The answer, for those wondering, is no. No, no, and no. A woman I recognized as a distant cousin stepped away from my parents, her face twisted with disgust. Several others followed, creating a physical gap in the room that spoke louder than words. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably now, her carefully constructed image completely destroyed. I didn't mean it like that, she gasped between sobs. I was frustrated. You didn't think your daughter might die, Grandpa finished quietly, because you never thought about her at all. Not really. She was just the reliable one. The one who'd always be there. The one who'd always say yes. He turned to face the entire room. I'm not asking anyone to pass judgment. I'm simply presenting facts. What you do with those facts is your own choice. Then he looked at me, his eyes soft with something that looked like pride. Myra, is there anything you'd like to say? I hadn't planned to speak. I'd come here expecting Grandpa to handle everything, to let the facts speak for themselves while I stood quietly in vindication, finally proven right. But looking around the room at my crying mother, my shell-shocked father, my sister's crumbling facade, I realized I had something to say after all. Something I needed to say. I handed Lucas to Aunt Eleanor and stepped forward, my legs steadier than I expected. I didn't come here for revenge, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. I came here because Grandpa invited me, and because for 34 years I've been living with a version of my family that wasn't real. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. I believed you when you said Vanessa needed more support because her industry was harder. When you said I could handle things on my own because I was strong. When you said medicine was stable and I'd be fine. I believed all of it, and I tried so hard to be what you needed me to be. A tear slid down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. But that night in the ambulance, bleeding and terrified, calling you and begging for help with my children, I finally understood something. I wasn't strong to you. I was convenient. I wasn't reliable. I was exploitable. And no matter how much I gave, how much I sacrificed, how much I proved myself, it would never be enough to make you see me the way you see her. Several family members had moved closer to me. An aunt touched my arm gently. A cousin nodded, tears in his eyes. My father started to speak, reaching toward me. Myra, we never meant. I'm not finished. My voice was quiet but firm, and he stopped. I don't hate you, I said, and I meant it. But I can't keep pretending this is okay. I can't keep buying love that should have been free. I can't keep carrying people who've never once asked if I need to be carried too. Here's what I need from you right now. Before we get to the aftermath, before I tell you what happened next, I want you to think about this. How many times have you given everything to someone who gave you nothing back? How many times have you been called selfish for finally choosing yourself? Comment enough if you've ever had to stop carrying someone who never appreciated the weight. Because what happens next, the way this family responds, the consequences that follow, it's exactly why boundaries aren't betrayal. They're survival. Stay with me. An uncle across the room turned to my father, his voice shaking with barely contained anger. How could you, Richard? This whole time you've been living off your daughter while treating her like she's nothing. The room was turning. I could feel it happening in real time, like watching dominoes fall. The narrative my parents had built, the story they'd told about the troubled daughter having a breakdown, it was collapsing under the weight of documented facts. So what now? Dad's voice was desperate, hollow. You've humiliated us in front of the whole family. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? I shook my head slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in that room. I'm not happy, Dad. None of this makes me happy. Do you understand that? None of it. I took a breath, steadying myself. But I'm also not sorry, because this isn't about humiliation. This was never about humiliation. It's about honesty. For the first time in 8 years, our family knows the truth. Not your version where I'm unstable. Not Vanessa's spin where I'm being dramatic. The actual truth. Vanessa tried one more time, her voice rising with desperation. This is ridiculous. You're acting like we're monsters. We're your family, Myra. Families help each other. That's what families do. You're right. I turned to face her directly. Families do help each other. So where were you when I was pregnant and alone? Where were you when I was raising newborn twins while studying for board exams on 3 hours of sleep? Where were you when I was bleeding out in an ambulance, terrified I was going to die and leave my children without a mother? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. There was no answer. There had never been an answer. I looked back at my parents, and I could see my mother's makeup running down her face, my father's shoulders slumped in defeat. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. From now on, I won't be sending money, I said clearly. Not because I can't afford it, but because financial support should be a gift, not an obligation. And it should flow both ways in a family that actually cares about each other. My mother reached toward me, her hand trembling. Myra, please. We can fix this. I'm also not cutting you off forever, I continued, cutting through her plea. But I need space. Real space. Not a few weeks of guilt-tripping followed by everything going back to normal. I need you to actually think about what you've done, to sit with it, to understand it. I shifted Lucas to my other hip. And if someday you can acknowledge it, really acknowledge it, not just apologize because you want the money back, maybe we can rebuild something. Maybe. I paused, letting that sink in. But I won't hold my breath. A great aunt I barely knew approached me, taking my hands in her weathered ones. Her eyes were wet. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I had no idea. All these years, I thought you were the one who had it easy, the successful one, the one who had everything figured out." "I know," I said softly. "Everyone did. That's how it was supposed to look." My parents left the party early. No one stopped them. No one said goodbye. Dad helped Mom to the car while she sobbed into his shoulder, her cream-colored dress wrinkled and stained with tears. Vanessa followed a few steps behind, her head down, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. She'd arrived like royalty and left like someone fleeing a crime scene. The silence they left behind was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was more like the quiet after a storm passes, when the air feels clean and you can finally breathe again. Grandpa Thomas found me on the porch about an hour later. I was watching Lily and Lucas play in the garden, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze like the most normal thing in the world. "How are you holding up?" he asked, settling into the chair beside me. "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel like I should feel something more. Guilt maybe, or satisfaction. But I just feel tired." "That's because you've been carrying a burden that was never yours to bear," he said. "And you finally put it down. That's exhausting in its own way." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then he said, "I'm proud of you. Your grandmother would have been too." I felt tears prick my eyes. Grandma had died when I was 15, before all of this started. "You think?" "I know. She never liked how Richard and Helen treated you. Used to tell me all the time that they were raising Vanessa to be a princess and you to be a servant. I should have intervened sooner." His voice was heavy with regret. "No," I said firmly. "This isn't on you, Grandpa. You did more today than anyone else has done in 8 years. You gave me something I didn't even know I needed." "What's that?" "Witnesses. People who know the truth. So I don't have to keep carrying it alone." In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and comprehensive. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives. Cousins I'd barely spoken to in years reached out to apologize. Aunts and uncles who'd always believed my parents' narrative of the perfect family were reevaluating everything they thought they knew. "I always thought you were the difficult one," Cousin Rachel texted me. "Vanessa made it sound like you just pulled away for no reason." "I'm so sorry," I believed her without question. "I wish I'd paid more attention," Uncle Frank wrote. "The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them." The family group chat, the one where I'd received that devastating message, went silent for 3 days. Then it was deleted entirely. Someone created a new one. I noticed I was included. My parents weren't. More significantly, my parents found themselves quietly excluded from family gatherings. When my cousin Michael had his 40th birthday, 3 weeks later, they weren't invited. When Aunt Eleanor hosted Easter brunch the following month, their names weren't on the guest list. No one made a formal announcement. No one declared sides or drew lines in the sand. They simply stopped being welcome. The family had made its choice. My mother called me from a new number 2 weeks after the party. I let it go to voicemail, my hand hovering over the phone, watching it ring. When I finally listened to the message, her voice was small, desperate. "Myra, please. We need to talk. This has all been blown completely out of proportion. Your father is devastated. I'm devastated. Can't we just move past this? Can't we just go back to how things were?" I listened to it once. Then I deleted it, because forgiveness wasn't a reset button. I understood that now. It was a release for me, not for them. And I wasn't ready to release anything yet. They needed to sit with what they'd done. They needed to feel it. But the financial consequences, those were just beginning. 3 months after the party, I got a call from Aunt Eleanor. Her voice was carefully neutral. "They're selling the house." I set down my coffee cup slowly. "What?" "Your parents. They put the house on the market last week." Word is they couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments without your help. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, vindication, maybe even guilt. Instead, I just felt a deep, bone-weary tiredness. Where will they go? Your Uncle Frank is letting them stay in his guest house, temporarily. He made it very clear it's conditional, though. They need to get jobs. Real jobs. Not just waiting for someone else to bail them out. Jobs. My parents hadn't worked full-time in years. Dad had taken early retirement at 55, and Mom had never worked outside the home. They'd been living off my money for so long they'd forgotten how to stand on their own feet. What about Vanessa? I asked. Can't she help them? Eleanor laughed, but there was no humor in it. Vanessa's been drowning since the party. Word got out. Someone in the family knows someone in the fashion industry. She lost a major design contract. Last I heard, she's waitressing part-time at some restaurant downtown. I stared out my kitchen window at the backyard where Lily and Lucas were building a fort out of cardboard boxes. Their laughter drifted through the glass. I don't want them to suffer, I said quietly. I know you don't, sweetheart. That's because you're a good person. Eleanor's voice softened. But they didn't suffer for 8 years because you were supporting them. They didn't grow. They didn't learn. They didn't become better people. You stopping wasn't cruel. It was necessary. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. That evening, I sat down with my new budget. The $3,200 I used to send my parents every month now went into a college fund for the twins. In 3 months, I'd already saved nearly $10,000. By the time they were 18, they'd have enough for 4 years of college each. They'd never worry about student loans. They'd never have to work 3 jobs while trying to study. They'd never carry someone else's burden the way I had. That felt like justice enough. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday night, 6 months after Grandpa's party. I was putting the twins to bed, reading them, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, for the 1,000th time, when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. Myra. Vanessa's voice was different, smaller. The polished confidence that had always defined her was completely gone. Please don't hang up. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my heart beating faster. I'm listening. I'm sorry. The words came out cracked, broken. I'm so sorry for everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I said. For the things I didn't say. For laughing at that text message when you were... Her voice broke completely. When you were dying. I laughed. What kind of person does that? I waited, saying nothing. I didn't know, she continued, words tumbling out like she'd been holding them back for months. About the money. Not all of it. I knew Mom and Dad were struggling sometimes, but I thought they were managing. I didn't realize it was you. For 8 years. Myra, how did I not know? Did you ever ask? I said quietly. Silence. Then no. Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't, because I didn't want to know. I liked being the favorite. I liked that everything came easy for me. I liked that Mom and Dad's world revolved around me. She laughed, but it was bitter, self-mocking. Turns out nothing's easy anymore. I heard about the contract, I said. Yeah, turns out your reputation matters in this industry. Who knew? When people found out what happened at Grandpa's party, what we did to you. She trailed off. Word travels fast, especially when you've built your brand on family values and supporting women. We sat in silence for a moment, and I could hear her breathing on the other end, shaky and uncertain. I'm not asking for money, she finally said, or forgiveness. I don't deserve either. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What I was, what Mom and Dad did, what we all did. I see all of it. I took a deep breath. Then start from there, Vanessa. Stand on your own feet. Figure out who you are when you're not the favorite. Be better than what you were. Yeah. Her voice was thick with tears. I'm trying. It's hard, but I'm trying. Good, said. And then I hung up. And for the first time in our entire relationship, I felt something like hope. Not hope that we'd become close. Not hope that things would go back to how they were. But hope that maybe eventually we could build something real. Something honest. 1 year after the accident, that changed everything. I stood in my new apartment watching the sunset through floor-to-ceiling windows. It wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, but it was 5 minutes from the hospital in a good school district, and most importantly, it was mine. No mortgage payments to ungrateful parents. No insurance premiums for people who called me a burden. Just rent, utilities, groceries, and a college fund that grew steadily every month. Lily and Lucas were at Grandpa Thomas's house for the afternoon. He'd become a constant in our lives over the past year. Every Sunday, like clockwork, he'd pick them up for adventures. The zoo, the park, the science museum, ice cream that he thought I didn't know about, but absolutely did. They're good kids, he told me the previous week. You're raising them right. Coming from him, from a man who'd spent 40 years judging people's character from the bench, that meant everything. Aunt Eleanor had become more than family. She was a friend. We had dinner together twice a month, and she'd helped me navigate the emotional aftermath of everything, the boundary setting, the guilt, the process of learning to prioritize myself. You know what I admire about you, she'd said recently over wine and pasta. You didn't become bitter. A lot of people would have. You had every right to. What would be the point? I'd replied, bitterness is just drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. As for my parents, we hadn't spoken directly, but I knew from family whispers that they were still at Uncle Frank's guest house. Dad had gotten a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom was doing bookkeeping for a local church. They weren't thriving, but they were surviving, learning, maybe for the first time, what it meant to actually work for what they had. Some days I wondered if they thought about me, if they missed me, if they regretted anything beyond the loss of money. But those weren't my questions to answer anymore. I'd spent 34 years carrying their weight, trying to earn love that should have been free. It was finally time to put it down. Marcus and I had started dating 3 months ago. It happened naturally, gradually, the way good things do when you're not forcing them. He'd been there through all of it, the accident, the recovery, the family explosion. He knew exactly who I was and what I'd been through, and he stayed anyway. You know what I love about you, he'd said last night over dinner. You're the strongest person I know, but you finally learned that strength doesn't mean carrying everything alone. I'd kissed him for that, for seeing me, for understanding. If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I want to leave you with something. Not advice. I'm not qualified to tell anyone how to live their life, but maybe a reflection, maybe a lesson I learned the hardest way possible. For 34 years, I believed that love was something you could earn, that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved my worth enough, eventually the people who were supposed to love me would see my value. I was wrong. Love isn't a transaction. It's not a reward for being useful or convenient or financially generous. And no amount of money, time, or energy can buy something that should have been freely given from the start. The family I have now, Grandpa Thomas, Aunt Eleanor, Marcus, friends who showed up when my own parents wouldn't. They didn't love me because of what I could provide. They loved me because of who I am. That's the difference. And it took almost dying on an operating table to understand it. I don't know what happens next with my parents. Maybe someday they'll truly change. Maybe they'll reach out with genuine remorse, ready to rebuild something real. If that happens, I'll consider it. I'll listen, but I won't wait for it. I won't shape my life around the hope of something that may never come. My life is mine now. My energy, my resources, my love, my time, all mine to give to people who actually appreciate it. And if the people who raised you call your self-respect betrayal, if they call your boundaries selfish, if they call your healing a breakdown, then maybe they never deserved your loyalty in the first place. To anyone out there carrying a weight that was never yours to bear, it's okay to put it down. It's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to say enough. You're not selfish. You're not ungrateful. You're not a burden. You're finally free. And that freedom, it's worth everything. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If it resonated with you, if you saw yourself in any part of this journey, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a hard boundary with family? Have you ever been called the villain for finally choosing yourself? Drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. And if this story helped you in any way, if it gave you permission to put down a weight you've been carrying, do me a favor, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there, someone is lying in their own version of that ambulance, wondering if they matter. Show them they do. And here's what I want you to watch next. Click the video in the description about the woman who discovered her in-laws had been stealing from her for years. Because sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who betray us deepest. And sometimes the only way forward is to burn it all down and rebuild from the ashes. Until next time, remember this. You deserve people who choose you back. Don't settle for less. Ever.